So we got the beginnings of our table created, the expense tracker table. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the table that every month you're going to open up this and you're going to start to input an expense every time you pay that expense. So I jump online to pay my credit card, right? I pay that online. I get my receipt, right? Maybe I download it. I put it in a folder on my computer, whatever you do, right? What your process is. But you've paid that amount. Now I'll open up my budget template and I'll jump to the expense tracker table and I want to fill this out. I want to say, this is the expense I paid, credit card. This is the date I paid it. This is the amount, and maybe I'll describe it. This is the Chase credit card, Visa card, whatever. I'll put that data inside there. Okay? And then I pay my mortgage the next day or my rent the next day. Then I'll input that here. Now, we built out those other tables earlier, right? The monthly expense dashboard. Well, these tables right here, we plan out our expenses, right? Every month we've got these bills, we got these expenses or anticipated expenses, we got these subscriptions. These are the tables that describe what we're going to be paying. But the expense tracker is what we actually paid. All right. Now, you might recall on the dashboard tables, we had an actual column. Right there we go. And we could add one. Maybe we'll add one to the subscription as well. Okay, subscriptions, typically, that's what you pay, right? So that could actually be blank because when we pay it inside the expense tracker, we'll put the amount in here. And then these three tables, the actual will pull from that data. All right. Now, to make this easier, to make the expense tracker table easier for us to fill out, when I go into the expense column, let's say I'm going to put my rent as my first record in here. I would like a little drop-down menu. I click into the expense name, I click on a drop-down, and it gives me a list of all of my expenses. We're going to create a drop-down that will pull the names from these three tables right here. Now, there's a few different ways for us to do this. Okay? I am currently working inside of Excel through the Microsoft 365 subscription. This gives me access to several newer Excel functions. And these functions are going to help us to build this little dropdown. Now, unfortunately, if you're not on the Microsoft 365 subscription package, you're on 2016, you're on 2019 without the subscription, you're on 2010 of Excel. Unfortunately, you won't have these functions that I'm going to discuss here. But there are other ways to do this. And I will describe in the next videos how you can create this in other versions if need be. So for now, if you're a Microsoft 365 subscriber, try this out. All right. I'm going to go back to my expense tracker worksheet. And remember, our goal in this table is to fill out as we pay each bill. But to make it easier, we need to know the names of the bills from these three tables. So back to my expense tracker. I need to create the data validation. To do this, I first need a list of values for me to choose from. Well, you might think, well, we've already got the list of values. They're right there, right? Can't you just pull those? Well, the data validation has got to be one consistent list. It can't be three separate ranges like it is currently. So back to expense tracker. I'm going to move off to the side, just someplace empty, and I'm going to create the list right here. I could put it on another worksheet, use that worksheet within my data validation, but for now, I'm just going to place it right here. Now, like I said, there's many different ways to do it. Here's one of them. So I'm going to create a formula. I'm going to say equals, because I'm creating a formula inside of Excel. And I'm going to use a function called TOCOL, or TOCOLUM. I'll hit my tab key once it's selected. So I got equals TOCOL, open parentheses, and now it's got three things that it needs from me in order for it to do its job. It's actually got three things, but only one of them, the array, is required. It needs to know where the data's at. What is it that you want? Now remember, our data is three separate columns. One inside the bills table, one inside the expenses table, and one inside the subscriptions table. So in order for us to grab multiple arrays or multiple non-adjacent ranges of cells, I'm going to open up another parentheses because we're going to put all three of them comma separated inside of a pair of parentheses. So with that second parentheses, I'll go to my monthly expense dashboard. I'm going to select the bill range inside that table. So from rent all the way down to your last empty cell, comma. Then I'm going to grab the expense name inside the expenses table, comma. And now I'll grab the subscriptions name column. And I'm done grabbing my range. So now back to my formula. I got my TOCOL, two open parentheses. Once I'm done with all three of my ranges, I'll then close the parentheses. That's done for the array. Done. I'm going to close the parentheses again, and now I'm done with the TOCOL function. And I'll hit my enter key. And now I've got my range of cells. Look at that. All my data right there. Now, you might look at that and say, well, there's something off here. We got the names in there, sure, and we got a column of those values, but we got a bunch of zeros in there. Because remember, we grabbed even the blank cells. We grabbed all of them in anticipation that more data is going to be input into these tables. We want our formula to automatically update, but I don't want those zeros. Well, I'll get back to my expense tracker. If I go back to the first cell, I'm going to give it a double click, and I'm going to click into the formula. So we only used one of the parameters, the array parameter. But you'll notice the second one is called ignore. It wants to know what we want to do if the cells are empty. Well, we want to ignore it. So I'm going to go to the end of the formula, right in between the two closed parentheses. And I'll do a comma. I'm now inside the ignore, and I'm going to tell it to ignore blanks. Let's give that a double click. Puts a 1 in there. That denotes ignore blanks. I'll hit my enter key, and we've got our list minus the empty cells. Now, the nice thing here about this formula is it did all the work for us, combining those three columns into one, but also it's dynamic. So if I hop over here and I put in another expense, let's say I've got one for, let's say yard work. So I'll put that one in there. I'll tab over. Let's see, I'm going to budget $100. I'll hit my enter key. Now, if I go back to the original worksheet expense tracker, we've now got yard work in there. Pretty cool. This is the TOCOL function. If I click back into there, you can see the formula right there. Try this out. Let's get our list of all of our bills, expenses, and subscriptions into one nice little column. Try it out.